but we will also send around a summary afterwards. So welcome everyone, and I hand over to Dennis.
Yes, thank you. Hello everyone, I'm glad to see you again. Most of you I have already seen a couple of days before at the summit, which has been a pleasure again. I just wanted to say very briefly that we had this Global Solutions Summit last Thursday and Friday, 2 days of almost, I think, no, actually more than 40 sessions that we've put together, and a lot of keynotes from people including the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and the Italian Prime Minister Draghi, who, I don't know if you've seen it, Antonio, who had a nice conversation with each other.
Absolutely.
And it was actually really spectacular to see both of them in the same video call. This was my personal highlight of the summit, I must say. We are still working on the statistics, but what we can say for now is that we had more than 10,000 views from more than 150 countries. We've had all the Italian national lead co-chairs represented in our panels, plus a large number from this group too, who have been on various panels throughout the summit. And again, I think this just stresses how important this council has been in preparing the summit and bringing people together, how important your inputs have been throughout the entire preparation and also throughout the actual conference. So thank you again for helping us putting this all together. It has been probably one of our biggest programs so far. Just to say, we are currently, I mean, all the sessions that we've had at the summit have been recorded and will be brought to our website shortly. We need to do some final edits to the videos that we've received, and we will of course inform all of you once they are there, so you can go back to the program, see specific sessions that you might have missed. Anyhow, I was very happy with the result, and I thank you again for your input to that. Dennis, probably I forgot something that you want to add.
All I want to add is sort of a broad framing that the Council for Global Problem Solving is basically a catalyst. It's not an exclusive club. We're meant to draw many people in, and our purpose is to support the T20. So whatever it is that the T20 is doing in terms of its priorities, we like to bring together a strong group of researchers who can perform this catalyst function. And they all have strong research capabilities. They have good connections to policymakers in their own country and internationally, and they're strong voices in the public debate, and they all want to support the G20 in the longer term. And that is, I think, where the potential for us supporting the T20 really lies, because the better we communicate what is on our mind with regard to G20 activities, and the better we connect with one another, the more useful we can be in supporting, well, the T20 and also the G20 process, because we're in touch with the Sherpa teams and various working groups as well. And in terms of the summit, I just wanted to say the material that we have in terms of film footage, we want to combine with articles, research, analyses, policy briefs, and the highlights in terms of particular topics will eventually find their way onto the G20 Insight platform, which sort of helps provide sort of a long view moving from one presidency to the next, and enables us to keep track of the big themes that have been worked on from year to year, help us follow the legacy that one country has and its influence on future presidencies, and is a nice counterpart to the terrific work that the G20 research group is doing under the leadership of John Curtin, where you've got a compendium of agreements, commitments, lots more analyses, and so on. And so the combination of the policy proposals on the G20 Insight platform and all the information on the G20 research group provides sort of helps us understand where the G20 is going in the long run. That's all I wanted to add. And this year, obviously, we take our lead from ISPI, that is organizing the T20, and I'm really delighted that Antonio and Franco are both here, and we'd love you to tell us what is on your mind and how this group can be maximally supportive of your activities, of which there have already been a whirlwind. Please.
Thank you very much. Franco, I wonder if you want to say something before.
Please go ahead.
Okay. So then you can add something, especially on your task force and on finance. Well, first of all, Dennis, let me say congratulations. I mean, as usual, the Global Solution Summit was impressive in terms of contents, in terms of the standing of the personalities who attended it. I totally agree with Dennis Gorlick that probably the thing that will remain with me is, the impressive session with Merkel and Draghi. It was really an achievement, and I know exactly, Dennis, how difficult it was also to organize it, but congratulations also for making it possible. Let me say something about where we stand on the Team 20. We are currently in the process of reviewing the policy brief the policy brief drafts that we have already received. So we have about 160 policy briefs produced by over 500 authors from 53 countries. So it is really an achievement, I think, also for the Team 20 Italy. Probably in 7 or 10 days, we will be able to produce also preliminary results for preliminary and very partial results for each task force, because we do our best also to anticipate results, even if policy briefs are not finalized, for one reason, because that the ministerial meetings will take place basically from June to September, so in advance to the summit. So we will try also to convey at least and discuss again, these preliminary results immediately, and just even before the ministerial meetings. I think that there is something which is important, and this is what we did also during the Global Solution Summit. We are very glad to have one session for each task force, and some task force members also met in parallel during the Global Solution Summit. I think it was extremely useful because it was also a good occasion to proceed with this revision, with this debate. We are going on also with the events. We are organizing something like 12 spring roundtables with over 25 leading think tanks worldwide. We are also preparing the Global Policy Forum with the University of Pennsylvania on 22 and 23 of June. And of course, all this will be done in view of the final Team 20 Summit, which will take place in a hybrid form, hopefully, from 4 to 6 October. So it's a 3-day hybrid event. Hybrid, what it means, we still have to finalize it, but our idea is to have at least Italian and European participants physically in Milan. The Team 20 Summit is co-promoted with the Bocconi University, will be held at the Bocconi University. Of course, everything will be also virtual, so everybody can see it. It's a shame and it's a pity, of course, that we cannot have probably extra EU contributions from all the other countries, but there is the problem with the visa, of course, and we don't know at the moment how we can, and you had the same problem, how to manage it. I mean, we were working also, and we had also found money, for instance, to have about 50 people from least developing countries attending the summit. So we raised the money, we made it possible. It was not easy, but unfortunately, it's not clear if we can do it, and probably we're not able to do it early in October. So I will stop here, but of course, for any question, I'm here, and I would leave to Franco.
Well, I want to join Antonio in congratulating for your summit. It was exciting and useful, I think, as usual. It's a pity that we cannot meet in that beautiful place in Berlin as usual, but it has been useful anyway. Well, as far as the T20 Italy is concerned, let me perhaps add a little bit on my own task force, which is the International Finance Task Force. It's also an example of what all the task forces are doing. We are now processing 15 policy briefs that we have been cherry picking from about 50 proposals that we've received. These briefs have already been written in their first draft form and have already received the first referee. On average, you have about 3 referees per brief. Some of them have more, some of them are only 2. Some of them have already revised, have already produced the first revision, but I think we will go on until the end, which is the end of June. It's a bit before, it's at the 20th of June, but I suppose that we will be ready in the very last part of June with the whole set of completed briefs. The briefs are also discussed in the webinars of various forms. Antonio has already talked about these webinars. We have organized some webinars which are strictly internal to our task force. Others are much more diffused. The topic of our work is divided according to chapters that you can derive from the website of T20. But anyway, they are looking basically at the emergency situation coming out from the COVID for less developed countries in particular. So the global safety net and the debt overhang, how to deal with these problems. And there have been several proposals, including proposals to set up new mechanisms, new institutions, new form of institutional cooperation between countries in order to restructure the debt, in order to swap the debt in different forms, in order to collect also private money, to channel it into these countries, and in some cases to create conditions that allow these countries to receive the money, but also to propose a plan, a program, which is in a way compatible with the strategy, say the ecological strategy, the sustainability targets, etc. So there's also a sort of exchange of financial support for commitment to use the financial support in the right way. There are papers on coordination of monetary and fiscal policies, in particular on how to get out from the emergency measures of fiscal and monetary expansion that has been taken during the COVID and that will have to be taken away, but in the right way, with the right rhythm. There are proposals in this sense. And then there are some very specific contributions, for instance, on standardization of ESG measures, on the definition of state-owned enterprises, state-owned multinational enterprises, which, as you know, they constitute a problem for international coordination, and we don't even have a definition for that, and there is a definition proposed. And a few other specific themes. So it's a rich menu of issues and papers. We hope to come out with some influence, at least spiritual influence. I don't trust the G20 to take our proposals, face value, but perhaps we can have some influence. And in fact, as Antonio knows very well, we do have the attention of the G20 people, in particular of the finance trackers. This is the pressure, the attention that I feel in my task force. The finance trackers, obviously, it has a particular importance in the G20, and we do receive attention. We also have channeled some of our briefs. The draft of some of our brief, we have channeled them to G20 to the G20 finance track people. So they know what we are doing, and they will also come out with suggestions. We already had some webinars with them, so it's working. Thank you.
And we are doing so also, of course, for other task forces.
Yeah, it's an example.
Yes.
I think we're all agreed that this is extremely impressive, what you have put together. And week by week, we are stunned by how many activities and insights are coming out of ISPI and your networks. So that is a really big thing. One thing that I just wanted to mention in this regard is that I remember when I co-led the T20 under the German G20 presidency, one thing that was very useful is that within the Council for Global Problem Solving, we're each in touch with policymakers in our own countries. And when interesting and potentially relevant ideas come up, we can use our network of contacts in order to check whether particular new policy ideas are likely to fly in other countries. And that proved very useful under the German presidency, that we had some ideas, talked them over in the German Chancellery, and they said, well, we don't know whether they are acceptable to other countries. And we put it around in Council for Global Problem Solving, got very quick through informal channels an idea of where it's going. And that's one thing that you should feel free to make use of. This body as a whole, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And it goes much more quickly than the formal diplomatic channels that often take place here. Good, well, wonderful. This is really impressive, and we look forward to staying in touch. And in that regard, I now wanted to move to the next agenda point, just to talk about two activities that we would like to start. One is the Council for Global Problem Solving workshops, which are basically, you need to think of that a bit like sort of a seminar series where you present a G20 relevant initiative that is going at your institution. that is you think is of particular importance in your institution. And if we have these workshops, say every second month, and every month there are two institutions presenting, each say 15 minutes plus a 15-minute discussion, then in the course of a year, we won't be able to have covered everyone, but we'll have covered, most of the people in the Council for Global Problem Solving. And it's a way of sort of keeping in touch with what each of our institutions thinks is important going ahead, and also a way of connecting with us, so that if you have an important conference or workshop on this coming up, and then the rest of us will know of it and could contribute to it should that prove useful to you. So it's just another way of taking advantage of the the power of the group. Are there any sort of reactions that you have to this plan of a workshop series every other month? Yes, Munir.
Yeah, thank you. First, yes, I mean, congratulations to both of you for really successfully hosting the Global Solution Initiative. And I think, as many of my peers have already observed, that in terms of quality and depth and breadth, it was one of the best. Now, one quick thing, I would like to pick up on two words. One, which you mentioned, Dennis, that we are the catalyst group, which supports the G20 activities and agenda. And also what Franco just said, that how do we get into the largest table? I'll just share my experience. When I became the co-chair of the digital transformation, one of the things I told Maria, the lead chair, that I would go out and try to bring those who are actually driving the digital transformation, like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Google. And I'm very pleased to tell you that in the policy brief that we led, this is the first instance in one policy brief. You have a tech giant, Google, you have a multilateral development, World Bank, you have a philanthropy open society foundation. What I'm trying to emphasize, when we do these workshops, it will be a good idea, it's a good opportunity, not just to be within ourselves, also to reach out to those organizations and people who are driving the agendas on the field. So even if you pair up within two of us, I mean, if it would be good to have some of the relevant stakeholders so that policies go beyond the confines of four walls and start making impact. G20, as we know, is a platform. It doesn't have any enforcement mechanism, but it's a good way for 20 powerful economies to talk about things which are globally important. But when it comes to actually enforcement, it has to be those agencies who are doing it. So the more we get them into us, and on that note, I would have a suggestions to CGP. Within us, if we can have a small unit which sort of engages in sort of outreach and external stakeholder engagement, then at least we have some form of means to continue to interface with these countries, government agencies, multilateral agencies, so that they also feel a sense of ownership in this entire process. Because what happens, as Franco very correctly mentioned, when it ultimately goes to the leadership after the rounds of filtering, very few of them make through after all the ministerial rounds. And then it's up to the leaders which they will accept or they will not accept. But what we can do, push the boundaries a little bit and try to bring other players beyond the leadership so that these policies hopefully start making some impact around the world. So on this pairing thing, Dennis, I think it will be good. I mean, if we some of the pairings, we also try to bring, they may not necessarily be think tanks, but they are relevant players. That's the suggestion I had.
Thanks so much. That is a really useful suggestion. I'd be keen on other people's reactions to it. All that I'd like to bring to this is that we would like to keep this activity as simple and uncomplicated as possible. So with regard to the workshop, if any of you, any members of the CGP would like to give a workshop, please let us know. You can do it on any topic that you like, provided that you're working on it and it's relevant for the G20. What you've just said, Munir, is that we should feel free to invite other stakeholders, have a multi-stakeholder environment here, and especially implementers, so that there can be an interesting discussion. And in order to keep this simple, just to kick it off in a maximally simple way, I would say that if you are presenting, then feel free to bring in multi-stakeholder implementers alongside. And if others would like to do so too, then please consult with the people who are presenting so that the whole thing is kept manageable and simple. If that's okay, then that's an excellent suggestion.
And also, Dennis, what you might want to consider in a small scale, in a modest scale, if we have a unit within CGP, which slowly starts in parallel to what we regularly do, not our mainstream activity. And I'll be quite happy to sort of, in a way, give time, effort, if you guys are interested as well.
So could we talk about this bilaterally? Because at present, I just want to start something that is sort of maximally simple. And then to have the outreach committee or so on, that's something we should definitely discuss, but it'll require some preparation.
Sure.
Let's do that bilaterally. Any responses to what we've done so far? Dennis,
I see that John Curtin, you want to say something?
John.
Yes, Dennis, very quickly, a great idea. I can see value if the actual subject matter of these workshops coincided with, came in the lead up to the major subject-specific global summits rolling out for the rest of this year. The ones that spring to my mind in my space, September, the UN, there's a big food summit, for example. And then we've got biodiversity in Kunming in China in October. And of course, climate change in Glasgow in November. So since my gang is buried in climate change at the moment, I'll start to think about what we might be able to do in the climate change space. But I'm sure there's other summits more broadly that folks in other task forces are preoccupied with.
So we'd be very happy to coordinate this. If you could, you've got encyclopedic view of summits. If you could send us the particular summits that you're concerned with, and if the rest of you could do so too, then we will collect all of this and make this broadly available and see how well that aligns with the proposals that we get for these 15-minute talks. Obviously, the talks are meant to be really simple. 15 minutes will not require a lot of effort, but you'll gain exposure, you'll get responses from other council members, connections to other institutes beyond it, and hopefully be able to get a better view as to how it fits into this particular G20 and following G20 summits. Yeah, if that's okay. So if you could all send what you think are important events that we need to coordinate with, and above all, also send us your potential interest in giving a 15-minute presentation.
Can I just ask a very short question, Dennis? So I suppose that the presentation mustn't be limited to people from this group as we have them on screen right now, right? It would also be people from your institutions that work on G20 related issues that might be interesting for this group. Is that right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So it just needs to be relevant to your institution and relevant to the G20. and you'd like to bring it to the notice. And if you've got a colleague who'd like to present, that's absolutely terrific. It's just meant to give us all an understanding of what's happening in our respective institutions. Thanks for that, Dennis. That's really important point.
Could I mention something, Dennis? Perhaps an idea to follow up from what you mentioned and what John mentioned is to maximize impact. I mean, we could not only look at the specific themes that are coming up in summits or in other venues, but also to try and engage the relevant people in the G20, dealing with those issues. I'm thinking of, maybe chairs of or co-chairs of a G20 working group or a certain, or a Sherpa that could join us in these workshops as a way of raising awareness as well. At the core of the people who will be sitting around the table and making sure that the G20 work that will be done around that area actually takes off. It could be if we could try to always have as a partner around the table, those people, I think it would help a lot with impact.
That's an excellent suggestion, and I guess once we know what the schedule of presentations are and the topics, then I guess we're all in a better position to contact the relevant policymakers in the G20 space to take part in this. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think we all sort of bear it's individual, I don't want to say responsibility, but individual drive to make this happen. Obviously make it very useful. Thanks, Louis. That's really
Dennis, one question. Will you circulate a written description of this initiative so that the rules are clear for everybody?
Yes. And it will be very, very short because it's meant to be as simple as possible and provide as much latitude as possible. So it's sort of open-ended, minimum effort, maximum gain in terms of information. That's all that we want. But yes, we will do that. And then, if some of you think this is not useful or it's going in the wrong direction, particularly, on the Antonio or Franco or others, please let us know, because it's meant to be particularly useful to the T20 in each particular year. Mark.
Personally, Dennis, I think it's extremely relevant, even because, whoever is going to be also the next chair of the Team 20, it is key to understand what are the main themes and issues covered on G20 related issues by think tanks. It's not always so easy. I mean, it's quite easy to do for, the usual suspects. I mean, the usual think tanks, but especially in developing countries or in Africa, it's not so immediate, to have this knowledge. So as far as, there is, this sharing also of expertise on the G20, this is important. So that's why I think that maybe we could also go beyond, the strict club of the CGP, by having, some invitees also from other continents, from other countries, and see what they are doing on this.
I think that's a terrific idea, because this group was never meant to be exclusive. So if you have, as we all do, interesting networks of other institutions that may be particularly relevant for the G20, and you as member of the CGP should be free to invite them. And we are continually, obviously, on the lookout for people who could gain by joining the CGP, and so forth. And so bringing people into this group, provided that they're active.
Dennis, not necessarily, I mean, as members of the GDP, but just, you know, as observers, as invitees, as you want to call them, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And we've had all that. We've had some observers who turned into members, those who didn't, or some who will just want to present for 15 minutes and discuss and then leave. All of that is fine. Let's keep it open, flexible. And so all of you, please feel free to make suggestions in that regard.
Thank you.
Provided, obviously, you've talked it over with the other institutions.
I think Anbu has raised his hand, and then we should, after that, switch to the next topic, I guess.
I think regarding, I think the ongoing discussion, and I think it is also timely. I think now we in June, and so this kind of meetings and seminars are one is timely. But I think there is 3 points that is we could consider. One is this. It's already mentioned by Antonio, that's the diversity in collecting the wisdoms. That can be anywhere. That is how we include this diversity of ideas that is transmitted into G20 discussions. That is one point. And the second point is the impact. And I think it may be a time that is our policy briefs are getting ready and core messages are coming out. And so reaching out to the different G20 task force. For example, Indonesia, already they have that second meeting. And so reaching to these national capitals is also important. And that how we do and how we engage them, that there will be different modalities. And the third one is also outreach, and outreach means that is the G20 have the other peripheral groups like a B20 and the OI20. They also discussing it, and so maybe we can have some kind of inclusion or the outreaching that or the early messages. This kind of seminars can help them to understand what our thinking, and also we can incorporate their thinking. So that is the we can find some synergies our own activities.
Super, that's terrific. I've seen Mark, and then Gala. Did you have? No.
Yeah. Mark. So thank you and congratulations really for all the work. I just wanted to add about the outreach that was just mentioned, that it would be nice if we could involve the people who are not exactly stakeholders, but we are opinion makers, the media, in the loop. So all of us, each of our institutions has connections with local media. I was wondering if, as CGP, there was a way perhaps to coordinate the media outreach strategy and perhaps reach the global media. And so if there was some partnership that could be built, you could imagine that there would be a series of papers or things like that happening on the side of the workshops on topical issues of the moment. And that could be really good for the visibility of the work. I'm so impressed by all the ideas that come out of the summit. So it would be nice if that could reach not only policymakers, but also the public opinion at large.
I think that is another excellent idea. And I think we should all think carefully about which media people we can bring to the table. That will be obviously topic specific. So once we know the topics that will be presented, that will then also identify the relevant media people who deal with that topic. But if we could bring media on board in these discussions, sort of, it's like their background information talks would be really useful. Yes, another great idea. Thank you. Okay, we are, as Katarina has just let us infer, we're already a bit short of time. And I'm just going to say 2 words about working groups and then hand back to Ambu to talk a little more about plans for connecting with the Indonesian T20 process. With regard to working groups, we currently have one working group that is running on digital governance and how to reform digital governance. And there we have assembled so far more than 60 top experts worldwide in diverse areas, from competition to privacy to cybersecurity and all the different angles, in order to come up with a report at the end of this year to the European Commission on the next step beyond GDPR and the digital package. And since Europe is a large player in terms of digital users, that is likely to have a larger global impact. But we are also, of course, in touch with colleagues in the United States who also show now increasing interest in reforming digital governance. And if there's any interest in either getting information about what this working group is doing or becoming a member of it, or at least applying to be a member of it, please let me know. We're going to restrict the working group to no more than 100 people in the end, because it's, and that working group is then divided into a dozen subgroups that are all tied together into sort of one big thing. And we see this as a cross-cutting theme that will obviously feed into the other G20 priorities, be it environment, social cohesion, health, and so forth. And the other working group that we're in the process of planning is one on measurement of economic and business performance. We had a meeting on this. Katharina, would you like to say a few words about our past meeting?
Or maybe just very briefly. So some of you were there. We had a meeting on May 20th on measuring economic and business performance. And I think it was a very fruitful exchange of ideas and pressing issues. Dennis and I presented the recoupling dashboard as one possible approach to measure economic performance. Then we also had presentations from the OECD, from Oxford, from the Multidimensional Poverty Index. And then we also had from the business side, Andrew Watson from Rethinking Capital, who made who gave an idea of his approach on normative accounting. So I think it was very useful exchange of ideas, and we will send around a summary this week about the meeting, and all of those who were there, thank you very much. And if some are interested in joining this working group and talking about these issues, we very much look forward to hearing from you and to continue this initiative and to produce, as a first idea, we would like to produce a report where we present and try to harmonize existing approaches on measuring economic performance. This is one idea that we had as a concrete first step in this working group, and we look forward to many more ideas and initiatives.
And here too, I think to be supportive of a major effort is something that this group does well. And the major effort that is now taking place is at the OECD, the recovery dashboard, and to provide more input to that and provide bridges between that and other analogous efforts seems like a very reasonable and potentially useful way to go. And so we will clearly want to focus our efforts in that direction as well. Good. Well, if I could now turn to Anbu, if you could tell us a bit about how this group and its networks can start thinking about connecting with the relevant think tanks and policymakers in Indonesia in order to start moving, having your priorities in mind?
Yeah, and here, to be frank, and the momentum to get this, to inherit the G20 presidency by Indonesia is little delayed, and this is natural. And given that it is the month of Ramadan, this is a Muslim festival, and then this Jakarta national capital is also under semi-lockdown. That means most of the officials and the ministries are working from home. Given this situation, I think President has directed, and Minister Erlangga Hartarto, he's, I think, economic coordinating minister. I think he will be the focal point and for the G20, that ministry. And they have created a task force. I think they are closely coordinating with G20, and they developed a task force, that is the interministerial task force. They had so far 2 meetings, and for it's a kind of a brainstorming, and still the consensus is evolving. Probably I think 3 areas may get focused, and still it has been, nothing is confirmed. One is the stability of these international financial systems. That could be a kind of G20 agenda that will be taken up by Indonesia. And the second one is this green economy or the green transformation. And third one is the social security system in the post-COVID era. And possibly there is some kind of, you can see, sense some kind of a continuity from the Italian presidency. They also wanted to keep that continuity. Still on the T20 task, still confusion remains, and who will be the potential torch bearers. Yes, when I talk to some people in the ministry, they have not decided, but they basically they are preparing some kind of a document, what could be a kind of possible topics, and where this is the regional focus could be ingrained. That region means the Southeast Asia and the East Asia, and or broadly developing Asia. And they have been approached 3 institutes, whether they can develop a joint paper and a kind of a position paper for the G20. These institutes are one CSIS, and then another is STG Center in Bandung, and Kajamada University, that is famous for this international economic studies. I think still it is not yet final. So all these things are informal, and maybe it may take a couple of months to get a confirmation. And if anything that comes in, I could able to update it. And of course, Iria as a member of GCP is there to support the next T20 network, and as well as the SETPAS.
Very good. Thank you very much. That's very useful. And obviously, we'd be grateful if you could send us a quick summary of the information that you've just given us, so that we can remain in touch. And as new information comes online, we'd be very grateful if you could keep us informed, so that we can be useful in that regard. Wonderful, thank you. There is less than 10 minutes that remains, and that is very little time that is left over, but it is worth nevertheless saying at this point. Oh yes, Antonio. Good to see you, and thanks so much for
Sorry,
joining.
but we have the other event of the T20. Thank you, congrats again.
Fully understood. All the best. Take care.
Thank you.
If any of you would like to report on activities that are currently being done in your in your organization that are relevant for the G20 that you would like others to know about, this would be a good time to do it. And in the future, when we meet, there'll always be sort of a slot in which we can report on activities that are taking place. Unfortunately, we've had such a full agenda this time that leaves relatively little time. In the future, we'll make more time for it. But is there anyone who would like to report? Oh, yes. Arunava.
Thank you, Dennis, and good day to all of you. This is actually my colleague Shubha has been attending these meetings quite diligently, but I have only attended today, and I've just been in more of a listening mode. But to Dennis's point right now, just wanted to report on one thing and then comment on something that Anbu talked about regarding the Indonesian presidency. At CEW, one of the most important things we are doing this summer is actually helping Government of India as the sort of global champion for the energy transition that's part of the UN high-level dialogue on energy. And as some of you perhaps know, it's the first time such a dialogue is happening in 40 years. And India is one of the theme champions for the energy transition. So the reason I flagged this is, of course, this is important in a critical year like this because the high-level dialogue will happen, the ministerial will happen this month in June. The head of government session will happen in September, and then we'll have the G20 in October and then COP in November. But it also links very much to what happens in 2022 and 2023. And that's why I wanted to make a comment on what Anbu said regarding the priorities, at least, that the Indonesian presidency seems to be listing out. Two of them are, I think, directly related to this issue, this green transformation and the sort of social safety nets in the aftermath of the pandemic, because the two are actually in a way related. If you look at some of the energy transitions that Indonesia has recently announced, it would require significant social safety nets for the large workforce in the energy sector. The same issue will come up in India for the 2023 G20. And just recall that the 2023 will also be when, under the UNFCCC, there will be the global stock take of where the Paris Agreement has ended up. So I think we need to think about this as a sort of a continuum in the process that stretches from 2021, which is anyway a very, very critical year, all the way at least to 2023, when these different national and international events will serve as markers for a kind of commonality of themes that we'll be addressing. So at least CEW, we are already working very closely with Government of India this year, and we expect that will extend into the subsequent years. And I just want to offer our support and collaboration to whatever area might have to do in the 2022 summit. We've worked on Indonesia's energy transition before with other ministries in Indonesia, so we'd be very happy to extend our support in any which way possible. So I guess my comments kind of combined thoughts on a bunch of things we've discussed today, but I hope you understand why I brought it all together towards the end of this call. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to you for that, and it's a particularly important topic. You may want to consider having a workshop slot where just in 15 minutes you present energy transition, and that would give us all an opportunity to respond to that and support this work in various ways. So really look forward to hearing from you, and you could, as we've said, invite other institutions in India, possibly elsewhere, to join you in this very brief slot, but it would give us all a chance to respond to the particular points that you make. Wonderful, thank you. Any other comments, plans that you would like to bring to our attention? Gala.
Hi, Dennis. So thank you for the presentation today. No, just to mention that I'll be pinpulling in what CPEC, the presentation and the workshops and everything, and the link with other institutions you've opened up. I think it would be interesting to maybe loop in some other Southern think tanks with which we have good relationships. So I'll be maybe assessing a bit the field and going back to you regarding that issue. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thanks very much. Excellent. Very good. Super. Anything else that anybody would like to bring to our attention?
I would like to congratulate basically Dennis and also your colleagues and having the very successful, and it is the second time we had it in digitally, this global solutions. I think it went well, and probably we need to think further hybrid modes between the interactions.
Yeah, I suspect that digital will not disappear. Also, in terms of outreach, if we had it purely physical, we would never have had 10,000 people viewing. And so there will be some combination. Who knows exactly which way it will go, but as always, it lives entirely off the energy that comes from the network. And this is a core network, and therefore I'm really pleased to have your support, because that's absolutely essential. Great. I think we've reached the point where there's any other business. I'm never certain what that means, but if you can fill that with content, this is your chance to do it now. Otherwise, yes, please.
Thank you very much. I just heard from Indonesia that their message or their kind of slogan would be the recover together, recover strongly, or invest strongly, that kind of thing. So that's, I think, a very, very encouraging information.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much. And that is exactly the sort of information we need to be exchanging, because we know, let's say in Italy, the 3 Ps have clearly made a very big difference to organizing thoughts. And we'd also be very keen to tie ADBI in Japan into this when we've got talked about energy transition, green economy, future of social security system. Japan has very important perspectives to provide, and therefore love to stay in close touch with you on that as well. Thank you. Good. Well, we've reached the end. Katharina, is there anything else that we've missed that you'd like to add?
Oh, I think we've covered almost everything. I will send around a summary, and please let me know if you would like to propose a workshop or present 15 minutes activity. I will then coordinate everything so that we can have a first nice workshop, probably in September, but we will send around a doodle for that. So thank you very much for participating.
Wonderful. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Take care.
And congrats again, Dennis and Katarina.
Thanks.